No. So this is a no. Can you always use bleach? No, it depends on what you're doing, right? We'll talk about this. Sometimes you want to keep cost in mind, but the cheapest isn't always the best or the worst. But yeah, so the idea is that you want to think about what type of microbes, whether or not they're resistant, and then choose the method that will kill the most resistant present. Good. All right, so we're going to start by talking about some of these physical control methods. This will give you an idea of what we're kind of talking about and the framework to look at all the other ways that we kill things. All right. So we're going to talk about heat. And what's the opposite of heat? Cold. We can use cold to slow microbes down. What do you have in your house that slows the growth of microbes? You have two different things. The refrigerator, right? That's why you put leftover food in the refrigerator. If you really want to slow it down, the freezer. Exactly. We're going to talk about why heat and radiation kill microbes, and we're going to talk about like how you would apply those to different situations. Okay. So again, when we're talking about physical, we're going to start with heat as well as the lack of heat, and then we'll also look at radiation, right? And again, heat is often sterilizing, right? We're going to get rid of everything, right? The easiest way to think about this is, think about incineration, right? But again, so let's say you're working in a hospital and you've got to sterilize sheets. Should you incinerate? Depends on whether you want to reuse the sheets or not, right? So, and then we'll come back to this, but that's the idea, right? Definitely incineration. Does it work? It works, but it is also destructive. Right? So where do we use incineration? Yes, no, actually. We do incinerate things. So the thing that we incinerate the most is sharps. Right, so they're sharp, they're pointy, they're potentially infectious, right? We just put them in a box, send them off, and they burn them. And we don't reuse them, so it's okay. Yes, Elizabeth. A lot of garbage is incinerated, some of it is landfill. So it depends, so yes, yeah. So regular old garbage probably doesn't need to be incinerated, but something that is potentially infectious, we may want to incinerate. Typically cold, again, is not going to be sterilizing, right? This is going to be a static. And you kind of know this, right? So what happens if you leave those leftovers in the fridge too long? Eventually stuff starts to grow because you've slowed it down, but you haven't killed it. We'll talk about radiation as well, depending on what you can do. So ionizing radiation, which is like X-rays or gamma rays, is often sterilizing, which means you have to be careful how you use it. Whereas UV is more disinfecting. All right, let's talk about heat. Probably the most, other than incineration. Moist heat is a very effective sterilization technique. And here what I'm telling you is, so these are the approximate amount of time, getting back to Nevaeh's excellent question, about how long does it take to heat kill things. So if you have a single-celled eukaryotic fungus, like a yeast, typically if it's actively growing, so vegetative cells are the ones that are actively growing, right? And remember, how hot is 50 to 60 degrees centigrade? Is that warmer than body temperature? What's body temperature in Celsius again? 37, so it's warmer than that. But is it boiling? No, 100 is boiling, so it's in between those two. Even if they make resistant spores, it still takes a little bit more heat, but not all that long. Okay, so we're pretty good at getting rid of yeast with moist heat. Molds are fungi. These are both fungi. A mold is a multicellular fungus. They're a little bit more resistant. They often have stronger cell walls, so it might take 30 minutes. Bacteria, for most bacteria that are, what does mesophilic mean again? Kind of like, yeah, loves what? The middle. So this is the ones that kind of like room temp to human body temp. Do you have a question? Yeah. No, you do not need to memorize this table. Great question, Elizabeth. Nope. This is just, there's one thing I really, really want to point out, and we'll get there in a minute. So bacteria are pretty easy to kill, right? 10 minutes, 60 to 70 degrees C, unless what? Remember we talked about making endospores, and we said they are resistant 200 to 800 minutes of boiling is what it's going to take to kill a bacterial endospore. What's 800 minutes? That's like, I don't know, a day. It might be a week. It's a lot. Google it. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right. But what can happen if we take, 13 hours. 13, oh, that's bad. 30, okay. So, but still, I don't want to have to wait that long. Yes, to get a drink of water. But if we can raise the temperature above boiling, how long does it take to kill even endospores? Okay, so, and viruses typically are not terribly difficult to kill with heat either. So this is our issue, is that we're worried about the presence of potential bacterial endospores, which is why we need to be extra careful about using moist heat. So this is why not only do we not just boil things, we actually, so how do you get the temperature up that high without boiling things? You also, at the same time as you raise the temperature, you increase the pressure. So we actually use a big pressure cooker. So we have 2 of these on campus. Now, thank God, threw a party at the beginning of the semester when the new one arrived. Mac, you know what I'm talking about. I love the autoclave. I mean, I literally love it. A lot. What is happening here? Come on. Okay. So, an autoclave is basically a big pressure cooker. And what it does is it generates steam and feeds it into a sealed chamber. The front of an autoclave sometimes looks like this. What does this remind you of? Yeah, like a submarine or what? And you seal that up because it's got to be able to hold that pressure in and not explode out, right? And the idea is then you can load in the things that you might need to sterilize. And this is a sterilizer, so it's going to get rid of what? Everything alive, right? Exactly. Okay. This is what we typically use if we've got to be absolutely, absolutely sure that we get rid of something and we want to be able to reuse it, right? Because otherwise I could also incinerate. So when we use this moist heat sterilization, we want to make sure that we don't overpack because it's the steam, right? We need the steam to be able to penetrate. So those of you who are in lab, you've seen, right? Sometimes Dr. Sadiq will get out those little tubes that we like to use, the ones that look like little cones that hold about 2 mils. And they're usually, she sterilizes them in the autoclave and we put them in a beaker. What do we put on top? Aluminum foil, because the idea is that the steam can get up and in and sterilize what's in there, but then any bacteria that are going to rain down after we take it out of the autoclave can't get in. So that's kind of where we're going. And we want to make sure we can tell. We use a special type of indicator tape. How many of you have seen the tape? Right? So the tape starts off, it looks kind of like masking tape. Sometimes it's like fruit stripe gum where these are green. But after it goes through the heat and steam, it will turn from white to black. And that's an indicator that tells us, yep, we know that this has been sterilized. So we can tell what's going on. And sometimes when we test the autoclave, you can actually purchase, these are little test strips. Inside here are bacterial endospores. So you put these through the autoclave. Then at the end, you take them out and you streak them on a plate. Because these are, the idea is if your autoclave is functioning effectively, it should have killed all of these and they won't be able to grow once you introduce them to their normal conditions. Elizabeth had a question.
So, in how we see the tape on bottles that have something on the inside.
Yes.
So can you put the bottle with something on the inside?
Great question. It depends. It has to be the right type of bottle.
Okay.
Right? So what would happen, Elizabeth, you're crazy. What would happen, Nick, if I put this in the autoclave? Right, so some types of plastic or other materials will actually melt and create like a giant puddle of goo. Yeah, no good. but the special type of glass that we use in the lab is called Pyrex. So it's borosilicate glass, which can be heated and cooled rapidly without shattering. That's the other question. So yeah, I would not use like crystal. So yes, so you put Pyrex in the oven and then it's just take and be like, it's too hot, and we put it outside and we'll die. Where it's freezing cold, to cool down. Yes. I love Pyrex. It's like my favorite thing. Okay. So you can put, the key is, right, and then just like we talked about with the tubes, that's why when we put a bottle in the autoclave, do you seal the top? No, because number one, it could blow up. That's bad. Number two, we need the steam to be able to get into the liquid so that it can sterilize as well.
So you can sterilize the liquid in the bottle and put it sterilize.
Yes, that is correct. But not every liquid can be sterilized that way. What would happen if I put sugar water? What happens if you heat sugar too hot? It caramelizes and then you get caramel. But it's not in solution anymore, and now you have like a mess. So there are certain things that even if you could sterilize them, should you put milk? No, right? Because it would like curdle. So that, yes, you have to think about what you're doing. But yes, many of the solutions, so all of the broth, if you're using nutrient broth, you're using nutrient agar, all of that, we make it. Actually, Mac and I just made some, didn't we, Mac? So we make it, and we don't have to worry about it being sterile, but then we put it in the autoclave to kill any of the microbes that would be in there, so that when you use it in the lab, only the microbes you put on the plate are there. Does it make sense? Okay, good.